West Africa, as we know it today, was formerly known or referred to as Guinea. And guess what? The capital of Guinea or West Africa, or the seat of power, was Benin Empire. Yes. But when the British came, 1553, they wanted this power so bad. But unfortunately, the Oba of Benin will never betray his kingdom nor his people by bowing down to the British. Kingdoms like Benin were very bad business for the British, so they had to eliminate such kingdoms. So what they did to Benin was to destroy our monarchy, rather destroy our empire, took power from us, took our land and even our people from us. They separated us. And they imposed this slave system of government run by their slave boys on us. And it did not end there. They tried, and they are still trying as we speak, to bury our history, knowing fully well that if Edo people ever know who they are, when Edo people get to know their history, only then will they know their power, and we might rise again. So this is why our bronzes were looted. Our bronzes were a primary source of our history, a primary way by which we recorded our history. They looted them, destroyed our walls, and so many other sources of history for the Benin people. You know, while Benin was still standing, it was impossible for them to capture West Africa, which is why Benin was the last to fall, and immediately Benin fell. That was it for West Africa. It was captured. So power was taken from the owners of power, and then these people began to create kingdoms where there never were kingdoms. They began to create kings where there never were kings. Those who had some cash to throw around or were very loyal to them were made kings in Igbo land, in some part of Igbo land. Igbo people who never knew what monarchy was. From nowhere, a place called Ile-Ifẹ sprang up. From nowhere. And a title was created there, the title of Ooni. Now, understand something. Prior to this time, there is a place known to the Edo people as Uhe, which is also known as Ufe or Ife. It still exists till today. It is recorded that the Edo people drew their spiritual strength from this Uhe or Ife, the original one, located in today's Kogi state. Now, knowing very well the linkage between this Uhe and the Edo people, Benin people, and so many other kingdoms such as Oyo, they had to make a replica or a duplicate of this place, and they gave it a name that is akin to the real one. So, from nowhere, one Ile-Ifẹ, which they like to shorten as Ife, sprang up, and the title was created there. Now, it is possible for them to have made the Ooni a king, but they didn't, and that is for a reason. Now, they understood very well that the Ogene of the real Ife, which was known to the Edo people for centuries, was not actually a king. He was not a monarch. He was a spiritual head. So if they had made the Ooni of this new Ife a king, there would have been some discrepancy, some confusion. Probably the Edo people would have said, no, we reject this. This is not the Ogene we knew. So they had to make that position that of a priest instead of a king. Now, this was possible for them to do, to destroy our source of history, to create a fake place called Ile-Ifẹ as a replica of the original one. But then arose a problem that they are still trying to fix as we speak. Now here comes the challenge. So Ile-Ifẹ, from nowhere, out of the blues, came into existence automatically. It was never known before, but somehow we started to hear about Ile-Ifẹ. All right. So now the British tells Benin people and say, look, you came from this Ile-Ifẹ. The people like, we don't know Ile-Ifẹ. Say, no, you know Ile-Ifẹ. You dared not say anything. It was not fashionable to contest. It was not fashionable to protest. Or your empire, you came from Ile-Ifẹ. Ijebu, Ketu, all of you, you came from Ile-Ifẹ. And nobody dared say anything. And like I will always say, only God knows how many people stood against this thing and lost their lives. So now, the challenge that they had was this. If you say Ile-Ifẹ, or every kingdom came from Ile-Ifẹ, it means ordinarily that Ile-Ifẹ is older than all of these kingdoms. But the problem is, the historical documents available even as at then contradict this. Because as early as the 15th century, Benin had appeared in international historical document by Portuguese. Around the 17th century, Dapa mentioned Oyo, Ketu, Ijebu, so many other kingdoms, even Owerri, that was not even a kingdom at that time. They were mentioned in history book, but nowhere you will find Ile-Ifẹ. The place that was so great, they say now that it was an empire that was so great that birthed every other kingdom, will never be found in any history book. So even the British, who discovered Benin as late as 1553, could not find Ile-Ifẹ. So you will never find Ile-Ifẹ in any historical record that is earlier than the 19th century. Whereas Ile-Ife's children, Ile-Ife's alleged children like Benin and other kingdoms had appeared in history books as early as 15th century. And the Ile-Ifẹ, the mother of all of these kingdoms, you will never find in any history book before the 19th century. How come? Now, how come that a lot of people who wrote about Benin, a lot of people who wrote about other kingdoms such as Oyo, from different places, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the Germans, different people from different spheres of life, different professions. Some were just travelers, some were historians, some were business people, different people. They all recorded. People had no interest. Some of these people recorded these things not because they wanted to keep it as history documents. Some were just maybe messages or a description of routes. In case the other sailors from Europe wanted to visit this part of Africa. So they were not actually documented as history. But today, of course, we take them as history works. So these people actually had no personal interest while they were documenting these things. But somehow they wrote about these kingdoms, Benin kingdoms, Oyo kingdom, Ketu, and so many other places, but you will never find Ile-Ifẹ. Not even the British who created them wrote about them before their creation. How come? But as at that time, we were meant to believe all of these things, that we came from Ile-Ifẹ. You see these, they are urchins, these Ife-centric e-professors running around social media, distorting everything. One of the excuses that they give is that as at the time, Europeans could not write about Ile-Ifẹ because it was far interland. Meaning it was too hidden. So they are saying that Ile-Ifẹ was just at the end of West Africa. The Europeans could not get there. Whereas kingdoms around the Ile-Ifẹ, kingdoms that existed around Ile-Ifẹ were recorded. But somehow these people are claiming that Ile-Ifẹ was too hidden. So I don't know how hidden it was, how they managed to hide Ile-Ifẹ in their pockets or their bags, that kingdoms around them were written about, but not Ile-Ifẹ. I like to refute, just to be fair to these people. Now, one of the primary ways, let's really assume that you were hidden and the Europeans could not write anything about you. You don't have anything documented about you. But one of the primary ways Africa as a whole recorded their history is through folklore. Folklore. So that in their folk songs, in their folk tales, etc., folklore, their history is always embedded, especially Benin Kingdom. Their history is embedded in their folklore. Listen to these ones, for instance.
Ọmọkọ́mọkọ́ ni wa o, àwa kì í ṣọmọ àbí ìdànù. Òde ìbí ní nàbí bàbá àwa sí, ọba ló bí síbẹ̀ kì í ṣàárẹ̀.
Ọmọ ajín kẹ̀kẹ́ kó kódó, ọmọ asùn kẹ̀kẹ́ kó kódó, ọmọ ajàgbilẹ̀ ọba Bìíní, dó tẹ̀mẹ́ kó yọ ó tẹ̀mẹ́, ọmọ bó bù mí sìn máa bu ẹ̀sìn, máa bẹ̀ràn ọgọ́rùn-ún lára ẹ̀.
Now, those are examples of folklore. Examples of folklore. And you heard the first one from His Imperial Majesty, the Eleko of Eko. Now, this folklore, the folk songs that they just rendered, tell history, tell the history of Lagos. You see that the history, or part of the history of Lagos, is embedded in the Eko folklore, the folklore of Eko. And this they just rendered can be interpreted historically. So I ask a question. Ile-Ifẹ, is it that you don't also, apart from recording your history on paper, you don't have other sources, other medium by which you recorded your history, such as folklore? Is it that you don't also have folklore? There are no folk songs, there are no folk tales that tell your history. Is it that you don't have, or maybe somehow you have lost your memory or something? Call some of these their e-professors, Ife-centric e-professors, and ask them about their history. Maybe just mention out of the list of the Ooni on the website of the Ooni of Ife. Just pick two before the 19th century and ask these people to tell you about this Ooni. They will have absolutely nothing to say. Absolutely nothing to say. So now, this is where the challenge is. The British wants the whole world to believe that Ile-Ifẹ is the birthplace of Yoruba and even humanity. The crown of Benin Empire came from Ile-Ifẹ. The crown of Oyo came from Ile-Ifẹ. To everybody came from Ile-Ifẹ. Ile-Ifẹ that was born yesterday. Ile-Ifẹ that was born yesterday. And they have no historical record to back this up. So, they have the challenge. And how do they intend to solve this problem? One thing I think the British would have done, if it were possible, would have been to collect every historical material, every historical document that was written about Benin, Oyo, and these other kingdoms that they are trying to tie to this Ile-Ifẹ, prior to the 18th century when Ile-Ifẹ was created. They would have retrieved all of these documents and burnt them. Believe me, just to cover up their lies. But of course, you know that is not possible. So what did they have to do? They now tried and are still trying to write Ile-Ifẹ into other people's history, to write Ile-Ifẹ into other people's greatness. And that started by the naming that place Ile-Ifẹ, to make it sound as the original Ife, that is the original Ife, which the Edo people know as Uhe, that is located in the present-day Kogi state, in Omala local government. And the second thing they did was, when they placed a ruler there, the ruler, or rather imposed the ruler on the people of that place, they made sure that he was not made a king, instead a priest. And that is to corroborate, that is to make it match with the position of the Ogenenue. Ogenenue was never a king, he was never a monarch, but a spiritual head. So which is why they could not make the Ooni a king, but a priest. You see, just to make everything look like the original Ife. Now, they started to write. They employed people to write. But none of these things these people will write that will not be trashed by the already existing record, that were already, even as at then, they were already hundreds of years older. So what would an Ife-centric professor write today that I will take over what was written in the 15th century or in the 16th century. Not possible. Now, they also understood that having these local writers do the job was not enough for them, was not prestigious enough. So this is why they need the services of this very useless and dishonorable professor at Harvard, this Professor Susan Preston Blair, who has been trying her best to write Ile-Ifẹ and the Ooni of Ife into old history. She has attempted to automatically change Ooni of Ife to the king of Organa. The king of Organa, who is represented in the Catalan Atlas. And you see these Ife-centric retards online who are distorting history, who are going to Wikipedia and other sites to write lies. When they wanted to edit the page of the Rey of Organa, King of Organa, on Wikipedia, it is the work of this Preston Susan Blair they used. All they needed was for her to write that work. And as we speak till today, on the page of the Rey of Organa or Catalan Atlas, when you go to the part of Rey of Organa, Rey de Organa, that is King of Organa, you will see Ooni of Ife there, done or perpetuated by his Hutchins. This woman has tried, she has tried her best to convert the Ooni of Ife to, Ife to Yufi, as represented in Ibn Battuta's account. She is trying her best. And probably, don't be surprised. Maybe next year a book will come out where she will try to convert Ooni of Ife to one of the pharaohs of Egypt or Old Kemet. Don't be surprised.
And they now came up with a crown from Oduduwa, and they now took it to Kemet, and from Kemet they took it to Egypt. And that's how pharaohs in Egypt emerged.
This woman here, Preston Susan Blair. That is why this non-living thing here, an acclaimed professor, he is a professor. That is why he could actually write a book and pull the mask, Benin mask, that every child, everybody in the world knows as Benin mask. The Idia mask, the mask of our first queen mother, that was used in the celebration to represent Festac in 1977. This man, a professor, wrote a book and put this mask and labeled it the head of a Yoruba king. Now you begin to ask yourself, is it that he doesn't know? A professor does not know this mask? You think he doesn't know? They know exactly what they are doing. They know exactly what they are doing. So there is nothing they will try to write today. There is nothing they will try to pen down. No lie will they try to pen down that will not be trashed by age-long historical records. History books that are hundreds of years old, they must contradict them. And we will use such to debunk whatever it is they are writing now. Now, that is why when you walk up to an Ife-centric person, those who are carrying Ife without evidence, ask them to tell you their history. They begin to tell you tales, moonlight tales, moonlight tales. And when you ask them for sources, what do they tell you? 3 things. Number 1, they say go and check Google. Go and check Google. Number 2, they will say Ifa. Ifa. And the last one, they will say according to archaeological evidence. Google is not a source in itself. Google is not a source in itself. I mean, Google is not a reference point. You cannot reference Google. Google is a search engine. It's a search machine. What Google does is, if you're looking for something online, you go to Google, type what you're looking for. Google will link you to where you will find information on what you're looking for. It does not mean that those websites or domains that Google link you to can be trusted. Any website, anybody that has said anything about what you're looking for, Google will link you there. And any bozo can do anything. Any bozo can put anything on the internet. So when these people tell you, go to Google, go and check, they tell you, Bobo Diri lasted for 6,000 years. And you say, how did you come about this? Where is your evidence? They say, go and check Google. It sounds so stupid and so dumb. As of 2025, you give an historical account and somebody asks you for evidence, you are referring the person to Google. As stupid as they might be, they know exactly what they are doing. The reason they refer you to Google is because they know what they have done online. These people have created websites to publicize their lies. Lies that will back up their propaganda. They have gone to existing websites to edit information there just to suit the lies. Now, the worst of all is Wikipedia. Wikipedia, which I now consider the most useless domain online. I used to love and trust Wikipedia. It is these Ife-centric people who made me understand that it is the worst. Anybody can go there and edit anything. Go and look at what is these Ife people, Ife-centric retards, have done with Wikipedia. They have distorted, they have doctored everybody's history. They forced themselves in there. So if you are still one of those who bank on Wikipedia when you're looking for information, especially when it concerns history of the whole of West Africa, I'm very sorry, I cannot say sorry. Don't do it. Don't do it. Yes, one of the historical sources of these Ife-centric people is Ifa. When they tell you something and you ask them, you were not there, I wasn't there. So how did you get to know about this? Gbogbo Diri, an Ooni, an acclaimed Ooni, lived for 6,000 years. He said, how did you know about this? He said, go and ask Ifa. Now, for those who don't know Ifa, Edo people, Ifa is the same as Iha, the Iha that we have. It's just change in language, so to say, difference in language. Ifa is a divination or divinity. Divinity. You see, when those, maybe you see movies where you go to a babalawo and they begin to throw either okbele or whatever, or kola nut, they begin to throw to make some divinity, to check some things. That is Ifa. So, what these people mean is for me to know their history. If they tell me that there was that the Ooni, the second Ooni who lived before the mother of Jesus Christ was born, actually gave birth to the Pharaoh of Egypt. I say, how did you know about this? They say, it is in Ifa. So what that means is I have to look for a Babalawo in Ile-Ifẹ to go and meet and say, sir, I want to check something, Baba. He said, what do you want to check? I said, there is an historical account that I want to check. Please help me check it. Then they will not give me the thing. I will not say, did the Ooni of Ife, second Ooni of Ife, give birth to the Pharaoh of Egypt? Shame. Then they will not throw it. They will not say yes or no. That is your source of history. That is your source of history. And you still there without shame. You still dare to open your mouth in 2025 and tell somebody that your source of historical account is Ifa. Ifa. Some say Odun Ifa. In the whole world, with the little I have read, I don't know much, I'm still learning. With the little I have read, the little historical accounts I've read about different people, in the whole world, Ife, Ile-Ifẹ or Ife-centric people are the only set of people who will refer you to Ifa, who will use divination, oracle, babalawo to buttress historical account. Meet Oyo people. Oyo people will tell you their history. If you ask them where they got it, they will give you a source, either a book or maybe present some source somehow. Ijebu will tell you, Urobo people, they say this is where we come from. They will show you. But Ile-Ifẹ people, when they say theirs and you ask them, they will say, go and meet Babalawo. Go and throw Yafia. It's a shame. It's a shame. And on to the biggest one, archaeology. Before you ask them, they say, according to archaeological evidence, according to archaeological findings. They love that word so much. But truth be told, majority of them do not even know. They can't even spell the word archaeology. They have the littlest idea about archaeology as a concept. They spread as they are told. Maybe one of those boys they worship as professors online just use the statement according to archaeological. That is what you hear all of them say. They just bleat it out everywhere they go. Now let's discuss archaeology. I don't know much about archaeology. I hate to lie, but with the littlest I know, the simplest definition you can give to archaeology, simply put, archaeology is digging the ground to find history. Archaeology is digging the ground to find history. All right. So, a set of people might come somewhere in Benin. They bring shovels, they bring different things and begin to dig the ground. Now, in the process of digging the ground, they say maybe they find something. It could be anything. Maybe a piece of tooth, or maybe a strand of hair, or maybe a fragment of bone. They find such, and they will pick such as a sample, and they will take them to some lab, most of the time outside this country. In that lab, we don't know that lab. We don't know the lab they take such samples. Then let's say a week or some months later, or even some years, we hear that the tooth they found in Ego has given them some result. How they came by this result, we don't know. How they came by this result, how they process this thing, we don't know. So with that tooth, they will tell you that there was a cripple at Ego who was once the Ohen at Ego with a tooth, a piece of tooth taken to a lab somewhere in Europe or America or anywhere outside the shores of Africa. And somehow, a reasonable person would want me to take this over age-long history that was recorded. So, for example, Joao Afonso de Aveiro recorded something in the 15th century about Benin. So, assuming some archaeological work was carried out today or last year, and they now tell us something that contradicts what Joao Afonso de Aveiro had recorded as early as 15th century. So you want me to take some so-called archaeological findings that I have no idea how it came about over a record that is over 500 years old. Over 500 years old. I beg to differ. Now, let's assume that we can trust archaeology. Let's assume archaeology is really pure. All right. Certainly not the one conducted by the British, especially in today's West Africa, let alone Nigeria. Let's assume archaeology was really pure. It was truth. Anyone that is conducted by the British can never be trusted.
An iron smelting site believed to belong to the Iron Age was recently discovered in Ile-Ifẹ, Osun State. The archaeologist who made the discovery says this is proof that the ancient city is the cradle of Yoruba civilization.
Professor Adisa Ogunfolakan led a team of archaeologists to unearth this iron smelting site in Ile-Ifẹ, Osun State.
So they tell you a lot of excavations have taken place in Ile-Ifẹ. They have done a lot of excavations. I think the first one was Leo Frobinus. Leo Frobinus, an archaeologist that did not go to school. He never went to school. He never studied archaeology, but he became an archaeologist, but fine. Now, even Leo Frobinus, who discovered Olokun Head, which they now call Ile-Ifẹ, they have converted it to Ile-Ifẹ. It is actually Olokun Head, or head of Olokun, our own deity. So how it got to Ife, till today, we still don't know. All right? So they found bronze work. But till today, the Ile-Ifẹ people of Ile-Ifẹ, they will not be able to tell you how those bronze were found there. Who made those bronze? When were they made? How were they made? I know how to make bronze. I know bronze casting from beginning to end. A lot of children who are younger than me, I learned how to make bronze, how to do bronze casting when I was not even up to 15, when I knew the process. A lot of children in my city here, they can cast bronze, they know the process. We have a guild for it. We have a guild. The people who are responsible for bronze casting. Where in Ile-Ifẹ is bronze made? Nobody in Ile-Ifẹ has come out and said, I know how to make bronze. But somehow, the head of Olokun, our own Olokun, was discovered in a shallow pit. I don't consider that as an excavation. In a shallow pit, the Olokun bronze head was found in the ground. What it was doing in the ground, we still have no ideas. How it got there, nobody is saying anything about that. They'll say a lot of excavations done in Ife. Now, let's ask, who are those responsible for these excavations? Of course, your guess is right. Your guess is right. The British. The British. So now that they are unable to fathom a way to write these people into other people's history, so they go by excavations. They go and look for a tooth that is 5,000 or 5 million years old. 5 million years old. Yes, the British. The British carried out these excavations. People like Frank Willett. Yes, Frank Willett. Bernard Fagg. William Fagg. Kenneth Murray. Then there is this black man. There is this, I call him a white black man. He's called Peter Garlick. He's actually a Zimbabwean. A white Zimbabwean. And he lived and died in Britain. So you want me to consider that as an African, or because he's from Zimbabwe? Or I don't know, because he's from Zimbabwe, I should trust the process. He was a white man, but from Zimbabwe, who lived and died in Britain. And the last one, Ekpo Oyo, Ekpo Eyo or something. I'm sorry, Ekpo Eyo. And guess what? This man was mentored by Kenneth Murray, one of the first people I mentioned his name earlier, a British. These are the set of people who carried out the excavation that you want me to trust, that you want me to take over long or age-long historical records. Again, I beg to differ. Even the one Igbo-Oku, the one that was done in Oka, is still the same British. It's still the same British. It's not as if maybe I have an issue, because Oka was under Benin. So it is possible that the Edo people were there, actually did this. Oka was under Benin. Till today, this is the main city of Oka, just like what do I call it? The city center. This is the city center. This is the picture of the city center in Oka. You see our emblems there. Now you see how desperate these people are. But somehow my people, Nibuma said they can say what's the essence? That is why we are where we are. You see all of these things happening, all of these things. Somehow you think they are all coincidences? You think they are all coincidences? Just like it was a coincidence that Samuel Johnson finished his book, The History of the Yorubas, the same year the British fought Benin Empire, 1897, and deposed our Oba of blessed memory, Oba Vorame Nogbaisi. It happened the same year. He finished that book that same year. You think that's a coincidence? Just like some of you also assume that it is coincidence that the so-called Nigeria was amalgamated the same year our Oba Vorame passed in exile. The same year, 1914. The essence of all of this is to make Edo people understand. We were born into lies. Our forefathers were threatened not to say anything. Most of them, I am sure, lost their life for this cause. Those who could not bear it, those who still managed to say something, they were murdered for it. So the generation of people, of our fathers who knew the truth, had passed. So So we are absorbed into the lies. But we, this generation, are the set who will dismantle these lies with every evidence. They do say the truth cannot be hidden forever. We are the set that will dismantle these lies. We might not be able to do everything in our own generation, in our time, but we are very sure. We see our children are waking up now. They are waking up. They will continue from where we stopped. Edo people, you own West Africa. You own West Africa. Most of these people who are now disrespecting you, they were nothing more than, I do not want to use the wrong word for them. But we don't care about those now. We respect everybody. But what we don't want is people disrespecting us. We did not come from any Ile-Ifẹ. Ile-Ifẹ is a sham. Ile-Ifẹ is a scam. It was created to bring you down. It was created to make you feel that you are a Yoruba person. How are you Yoruba? Since when? How old is Yoruba? But that is why it was created. Remember, Benin was locked in the Yoruba block. Please, know your history, know who you are, know your power, and be Edo. Be Edo. The truth is, most of these things I'm doing now, I've told many people before, I'm not doing it for this present generation. I have lost hope in this present generation. Only a very few, those who are coming up, those children who are coming up are my hope. Those children who are coming up. And these videos, this information will be passed from generation to generation. I no longer have hopes in these ones that bring shame to us as a people. Well, Edo, wake up. Obedo yaga tokwe. He said,
Queen.
Yes, sir.
Queen.
God bless you.
Am I not decent?
You are decent.
Am I not reserved?
You are